The tab room will yell at us.
Oh,
So I have to live with them.
yeah, this whole thing is so, okay, then I can just, I'll just attach it and then send it.
Did you include judges on the entry?
Yes.
I think so, yeah, I got everyone. Should be set now.
Probably don't sit there.
Yeah, I will.
Alright, anyone not ready? Advantage 1 is the economy. Slow growth is coming. Increased immigration is key. Fox 18. The U.S. is still slow growth economy, 2.5%, estimated for 2017 to take a lot of advice, give by 3%. The 21st century pokey growth is labor productivity driven by capital accumulation, technological advancement, productivity gains driven by economic growth in the 60s, which will propose a big legal immigration prospects for games seem likely, and employment-based immigration is key to entrepreneurship. Hernandez 18. Immigrants are for 25% entrepreneurs, 40% new firms, and these will entrepreneur. Immigrants are twice businesses and firms employed approximately 560 workers, generally 60 billion. In 2012, 45% started valued more than 1 billion. We found immigrants immigrants very crucial media transfer of availabilities in the U.S. And migration has to stop knowledge and skilling immigrants key to farming that solves the economy and competitors. Reynolds 14. 70% of the boy labor force farm are from outside the country. The immigrant contribution 30% lower than 40% scientists. India, China, Mexico, Vietnam are also emerging pharmaceutical producing countries. U.S. share of the market come from 41 to 34%. Emerging markets with more percent competition highlights the urgency of immigration reform. China help immigrant workers in the farm will to maintain time to maintain global economic competitiveness. And total factor productivity stalled 3% growth. Immigrants key growth 17. Ramping of growth by inflation and employment perhaps global laws included forming immigration with German capital stock, labor capital immigration promotes second third, will still be an investment without modernization, G33% growth with challenging, growth is falling, immigration younger, without workers and without decline workers, so growth in use increase income immigrant workers, spread the cost of money, pension payments, immigrants more likely to working age, increase in the lead to displacement of business workers, as the workforce grows, the demand for goods and services, this stimulates production, need more employment, rising estimates, demand increase productivity and operating wages from the immigrant field, immigrants make wages for share assignment for tech workers, register encourage to make education. They're more flexible one way to work and innovation for immigrants all used to do shift to be honest production costs and frontier which is a little bit with the economy's long growth potential. They're increasing GDP per capita by 2%, bottom 9% also benefit high school immigrants produce fiscal surpluses. Capital formation, entrepreneurship, innovation are set to growth and slow growth causes extinction of extraterrestrial order. Haas 17. The burden maintain overfall the U.S. and the country has massive north congenital continual climate, maintain treaty commanders of DC, maintain order in the Middle East, Asia, in order to lead the U.S. these will have to order the U.S. not lead strong foundation, security requires you to be the U.S. is doing economically well ability needs without an extra respect for right all weakness, if only for the successful investment and then long-term growth solves the station key to multi-line ensuring stability. Bureau 16. The multilateral system was permanent strong. U.S. low growth excellent decline to average living making hard to change no level of health the West as economic house could be the Russian contest would be the new cold way. There's no environmental governance system. New tech areas bigger geographies the biology and take over the rules. There's major disruption. There's a little alternative global cooperation common the world. So economics in the U.S. becomes distrustful multi-national and decline cause strong flash up post 18. System of the separate economically common U.S. will always risk of harmful accident. Might be certain to Chinese sector on the free return of holiday. One trouble with foreign governments when the major governments still forward because of the open economic Washington may take attack promise with Trump. My minister tried to economic has about 100 million people. What I want to do is this is a world with U.S. lead will be national mortgage for every advantage. Choose nanotech. The U.S. needs samurais. This is especially key for nanotech. Hernandez 18. This optional policy where the business to create next 10 million jobs, American manufacturing promise to rise as well. Will be defined by innovation and employees, robots, automation, integrated and electronic by known sectors. DC should make it easier to provide global knowledge with engineering, scientists, software programs. Our compliments to American the United States must develop, have the world's most mind develop innovation and creative industry products, jobs, insisting with innovation, intellectual property, and high skilled immigrants solve is key to sustainable development and growth of the industry. Walsh 15. more than financial resources, intellectual capital, the people ingredient evidences that innovation is abundant, still and weakness them, leading the scientists who are disproportionately formed by the contribution of foreign individuals of a lot of these innovative, when analyzing data, high impact publication researchers, has significant implication for policy and immigration and human mobility, facilitate international knowledge transfer, these independent organized government developments, and finding point the importance of more liberal policy in relation to high skilled migration, in an attack of foreign scientific leadership between the countries that lead in science and technology, and immigrants solve innovation and innovating market more patents, YASO 13. Immigrants are more likely to pursue study, key to innovation, economic growth, immigrant students receive nearly 60% of all engineering doctorate research activity and indicative innovation, study high rates of by foreign benefits, immigrants have been successful, instrumental plan for the American benefits for the American economy, immigrants commercial life higher than neighborhood graduates, immigrants with incidents, in charge of technological, master doctoral degrees, and employing 4 U.S. high-tech entrepreneur, the engine, intelligent company fund makers, reduce 52 billion, 7.4 and 50 goals, American immigration policies are innovating, innovation in business is essential for economic and entrepreneurs, venture elsewhere, American Islam industrial innovation operation, economic within nanotech stops climate change, efficiently solves warming, Chlorar 17. Nanotech says mental pollution, economic commercialization, CO2 usage groups, or working with CO2 out of the atmosphere, condition use of water, they have a large development ratio for an CO2 element facility conversion into other things, cleansing water, toxicizing human capture, nanowater, nanotech, having water study for removing heavy metals, less waste, nanotech and clean water, whether this may become possible, research, accelerated digestion, farmers and food industry, generated by the waste, and nanowater double demand by against food producing, nanotech solves the environment, it's key to sustainability, move faster, and food Z16. Management contaminant soil and groundwater innovation concern clean adequate maintain technology we have to include the evolution radiation. This is part of the very effective transformation detoxification of contaminants to solid plastic species. Nanowaters can be utilized in water to improve the environment and control preventing contamination. Development of nanosomatic catalysts memories, enhance menstruation for opportunities causing limiting conventional treatments. In various applications, nanotechnology for environmental remediation have been successfully demonstrated, but still require verification of the efficacy of nanomaterials. Having used to remedy contaminated groundwater subsurface sources of contaminants at hazardous waste sites, and nanotech solves peak phosphorus, ag, REMs, and ocean acidification of Raleigh and Biswas 16. Nanotech is promising way to bring plant growth that improves the farming access sustainably and reduce waste in recent public research. Success in nanowater disappears will conserve natural wind reserves and reduce water contamination, nitrogen, phosphorus, fertilizer, and fix. Nanotech will have unique chemical structural features which can fight through biological processes that apply nanowater is especially beneficial because they're not coming out of the soil. And despite Trump, the U.S. can still solve warming. Tech is key. Gardner, Joel 18. There's a disconnect between what Trump says, what a government does, federal agencies, government scientific activities, and infrastructure climate change. We don't take any chances to limit change after senior official climate policy and autopilot the efforts about to tackle climate change with kind of Trump to push home. To address climate change, the U.S. continue to support technology, innovation, development of modern and efficient infrastructure to reduce emissions. And we can still stop warming. Action now is key for 2018. The reports that global warming could reach a 2.12 years world is forced to subsidize the high reports that will require immediate reduction in the emission of key target gases in the UN report based on more than 6,000 references. If temperature have to be the reference to the anti she said, warming causes extinction, multiple scenarios, Sharp Kennedy 14. The release of carbon through survival of climate change and the significant effect of climate change is affecting human displacement, 36 million displaced because of disaster climate change, contributing to forced acidification, oceanization of those double levels, surface diversity means less absorption person, less affection, sunlight, increased temperature, will create threats to agricultural systems, spread of supportive disease, rises sea level, turns into coast population, more than 2.5 million people who depend on ocean food, recent war in several other countries, compete for each side of those resources, a world full of droughts, flood, typhoon, whole countries, rendered uninhabitable, solvency, plan. The United States federal government should substantially raise the annual limit for EB2 and EB3 visa categories, eliminate the provincial limits, and exempt the dependents on sponsored individuals, graduates, and scientific engineering fields from the numerical limit. The whole plan is key to solvency at 57. The rules will tell us 25 years more distance may be the best place to live away and we see constant individuals. This company can be new start new company gain capital, new free purpose in China, we see cutting media apps, correction actions, we've seen long. The sausage will be used up to the limitations of the thing. Removing temperature of the purpose was the best is the ability, putting part to her subject permanent residence, may eliminate virtual Elizabeth all be the possible to HB visas, up to was later and a long return because the plan streamlines the green card process, Colleyville 13. Co-shooting the annual capital quota to EBT visa categories will limit 140 days normalized with America's economic needs to GDP true, with the quota remaining the same. Immigration system of economic goals will go on towards the living backlog. Eliminating personal limits, the vessel, OWC, EBT weight, EBT weight, African countries, and plan solves tech needs, Anderson 18. Professionally forced to leave the country, or fair to contain the use all free funds, you can do without purchase of this.
Is everyone good?
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. What does the 1AC do to materially ameliorate the harms for Black and Native people?
Okay, we give a couple examples. So first, for black people, if they apply for these visas, they can immigrate to the United States. Second, we say it prevents mass violence through things like war and global warming, and specific to indigenous
The global warming thing specifically, the Finnerty 18 evidence, you've highlighted like a portion and then left unhighlighted portion that specifically talks about how President,
Okay.
what?
Go ahead.
It specifically says President Trump, who has called climate change a hoax, designed to help China to make U.S. manufacturing non-competitive, cast doubt on the UN report. He cited unidentified other reports that determined the environment is fabulous.
I think that
there are other alt causes like
The Gardner and Doyle
I
evidence, I think, answers that the best. It says that there is still an aggressive push domestically for anti-climate policies. However, internationally, the American scientists have been cooperating to mitigate the effects of warming.
Finnerty
And it
says that the problem
please. Gardner and Doyle says domestically, the support of technology and modern and efficient infrastructure can resolve those sort of impacts.
So the Doyle evidence specifically assumes Trump and says despite Trump and Pompeo's opinions on global warming, like his cabinet's opinion on global warming, the U.S. still has the ability to cooperate with international institutions to resolve it.
Alright, what is sort of the relationship between the reading of the 1AC and actual political change?
We think this is a good idea. If this were to be implemented in real life, we think it would be a good idea.
Why?
Like, for the reasons.
But that doesn't answer the question. Like, how does this sort of translate into actual political change? Like, what is the relationship between the 1AC and that?
We think it like teaches debaters how to advocate for policy change that we think would be beneficial.
Why is that good?
Because it gets rid of confirmation bias and groupthink and like.
Why is getting rid of that good?
Because those create bad policies, i.e., like structural issues with the government, things like that.
Okay. Why doesn't sort of domestic research and development solve? You have.
Okay, a few words for this. First, the Griswold evidence and the Reynolds evidence, and also the Hernandez evidence would answer that question for the economy. First, the Griswold evidence, I said that immigrants are uniquely key because they're the only ones who can create a sort of spillover effect that can boost production and create demand.
What's the warrant to that?
Sure. The warrant for that is total factor productivity. It says that the growth of the current workforce has been currently falling. Without the growing workforce, that will make it difficult to hire workers. It also means that there's less production.
Why has the growth of the current workforce declined?
I'm sorry, what?
Why has the growth for like the current workforce declined?
We argue for multiple reasons. First is that there's currently an influx of those workers are probably most likely going to retire in the South Coast. Second is that in the specific fields that we pointed out, i.e. entrepreneurship, pharmaceuticals, and nanotechnology, there's an insufficient number of domestic workers already
domestically,
working
there's
there
an
now.
insufficient amount of people who want to do
Yes,
like
the Reynolds evidence also says that there's global competition. People are looking elsewhere to countries like Vietnam and China for industries like pharmaceuticals. Also, the Walsh evidence on the nanotech advantage says that immigrants do the most of the nanotech work. So.
It's a one-off growth nanotech solvency.
I'm sorry, can you give me the order again?
Yeah, it's one-off,
Uh-huh.
and then it's the case in order of growth and nanotech. Oh, it says it's self-sending. It's like weird. My laptop just turned black. Okay, I think it's good. I think it's sent. Someone tell me if it is.
I think it was already sent.
I got
Yeah,
it. I got it.
We both have
Cool.
it.
We all got it.
I'm good then.
Sorry. Last one.
So maybe you have one.
Wonderful.
Alright. Is anyone not ready? Indigenous people inhabit a structural position of social debt defined by clear civilization as grammars of suffering the settler and the native exists in a relation of structural antagonism in which natives are a priori deprived of humanity through the operation of terra nullius, imagining the land is empty to facilitate displacement from time and space, reform obscures the endless commodification, genocide, social death which defines civil society, whereas individuality clearly comes to define indigenous life arising from never-ending genocide, psychic burden, her love is being cleared a priori to exist in this shift of clearing its verb renowned, it was permissible, claimed it unoccupied lands belonging to discovering a European nation, martial rule is ontologically determined redness from the moment the settler meets the savage terra nullius, Native Americans are barred from sovereignty can only be regarded as non-human as the world is confused, as the world is concerned. The Indian never had any sovereignty, never had any claim to land. Ontological structuring echoes in the present defining redness at every level, not least the reservation, not a moment in which Indians own land, but the reservation is subject to displacing the gratuitousness of Oscar committed against red bodies, the condition of existence. The Indian is in red vectors who doesn't meet the red body through alcoholism, suicide, mental illness, poverty, in which collusion with police brutality were to wipe out red bodies. There were no subjects in America. There can never be a future in which redness is not defined by clear and reform will fail to take into account civilization, the process of extracting savageness, indigeneity is moved from the savage settler, colonialism declares lands uninhabited process the opposite another world is dominated, and the Indian must be rendered as willingness to reflect the colonizer once the native is cleared. On the symbolic level, indigenous referendum made empty civilization secures the ontological position of the settler that has ever dominion just as for all the savage claim to indigeneity, civilization begins commodification, removing resistance, there's no indigenous culture that can use as a haven away from capitalism, removing native children is part of the structure which not only seeks physical death but a deratiation of culture that robs native from all social disposition is the moment absolute law of civilization give coherence to the world by animating the ability to create society outside of empty space parity would obliterate the settler's ontological position through the destruction of the settler's civilized existence and the expansion of settler colonial sovereignty is based on the ontological securing of life as the infinite future is progressive new desire against the shifting signifier backwards at least savages to be eliminated. The result is endless bonds certain 16. New security is no feature of the institution of sovereignty secures physical preservation by bringing temporality into existence and producing a future sovereignty. The sovereign establishes a very meaning content of life itself. Sovereignty and a clear distinction between civilization and sovereignty. These pairs suggest a deep implication with colonization, which desires features and built into the very structure. Desire sees the perpetuity of enjoyment human beings or maintenance of the present requires accumulation of making perpetual reference of no future underlying life. The desire explains which is preemptive warfare, Israel, self-defense, future temporality, foundation of U.S. Order, futurism, the dynamic context of conquest and the civil societies. The original civilization is a position of temporality. Desire cannot erase the settlement. The impossibility of fulfilling futures and fantastical promises require some other way of being the names of manufactured settler societies. Resort to outright extermination through war, massacre, starvation, disease. Futures narrativization is rendered unsustainable. Temporality that must produce death in order to continue to produce meaning. Native as death must exist in order to produce life as settler. Hence production and new entity, new death leads as a settlement. Extinction impacts are fabricated by the settler. Death drives settlers have a psychological investment in imagining the end of the world to create a sense of white vulnerability at the expense of enacting decolonization. Dali. In 16, the desire to be at home infects the specter of native folk temporality, settler colonial of the repetition, compulsion, attending trauma. Settlers try to imagine their demise in a way that reasserts the paradox ideology with the result of potentiality of decolonization and annexation as a narrative trope offers settlers a chance to disavow their demise, logical elimination of indigenous people. Whiteness report on the apparent imminent loss, fear of looming annihilation serves to foster legitimate violence against indigenous people, obscure the brutal inequalities of frontier beyond the mask of white vulnerability, extinction narratives for the settler moved to instance of legitimate racial inequality. The act inhibits a paradigm of techno-scientific acceleration that makes catastrophic accidents inevitable. Subsequently, our capacities for control are overwhelmed by disasters. Politics is replaced by seeing the body itself is infiltrated by the machine. Matthew Mid. 13. The accidents will be globally simultaneous and universally disastrous. It speaks nothing more than the unleashing of violence. When we invent technologies, we always invent unintended unfortunate consequences. With the acceleration, we have catastrophes in which technologies disappear from each other. Great intensity, techno-scientific process, the catastrophe proliferation, desire creates on each very constant ambient events move us from in-situ accidents to the integral accident which will be experienced everywhere by everyone. Disaster will assume the level of a system to understand accidents. We need to recalibrate philosophy. Accidents are neither trivial nor unanticipated. They are programmed into every technology. As soon as something is established, it is accompanied by something unreliable which can trigger force the difficult to connect to deny the substance action, deny as misconstrue the subject, and cut the evidence at object. Settler colonialism turns any impact calculus because how you understand and value an ethical calculus are ontologically dependent on native genocide. The genocide of the native clears the way for the inter-settler discussions on ethical value. To be alive is to stand upon this Indian burial ground where we call the world. To be alive is to be unethical. Wilderson intent. Reflection only research ethically destruction of white bodies because indigenous have been consumed not just labor power language or land but the flesh into settler's body. Imagine such a wallpapering of white skin emojis demanding lest the white body completes itself to lay the groundwork for interstellar assemblage of questions. Foundational ethical dilemma. Settler ontology is guaranteed by the negative knowledge of what is not rather than positive claims about ontological whiteness secured not through identities but that it can be that it cannot be known through genocide is a demand so pure in its ethicology that the quotidian prohibitions with constrained ethics, grammar, suffering shared across the board that makes it impossible for the established function as a paradigm of suffering. We will not be loved by this Savage death is not our ontology for the attackers of it. Even the score would have been necessary for them to kill, to have killed at 100 times who actually died. Some 7.5 million Americans. Arena must adjust the logical political experience if this happened. Not vice versa. The U.S. would run out of people, and in the end, we can only call for the condemnation of the affirmative refusal to evaluate altogether. Only refusal and suspicion in response to the Stellar Project of the 1AC can avoid reinforcing the antagonism of civil society. King 17 ways of being in the academy needs resistance with native studies. Practice refusal that frustrate business as well in the academy. Native black families use refers to the question of various system, institution, order, knowledge, and secure humanity in violent ways. A declarative refusal to respond to how the purpose is asking indigenous who cannot seem to escape that the desire to be human. Refusal at the end of are the spirit of discouraged material moral territory of its authorities and almost every 10 ways in which interaction with which board guards were predicated on refusal. Refusal is not just a no but a redirection to ideas otherwise acknowledge refusals have to be developed into both method and theory. Go. Pharma is failing, there's no more innovation. Massing to 18 farmers no longer innovating. 78% of patents approved by the FDA corresponding medication already on the market. Only 4% newly approved products globally were designed to trade neglect receiving pharma use the patent system. They extend patient patents beyond protection set by the United States blocking knowledge creation issue patents for what is essentially the same drug. Effectively extend the company's monopoly on this type of drug while being the period granted by original patent and economic decline doesn't cause war dresser. In 12 the outcome addresses the dog that has embarked the effective recession on the cross-border conflict during the crisis. Analysts said the crisis would lead to states to increase the use of the force, whether through internal repression, division, or arms race, or reckoning of great power conflict. They were genuine concerns of the global economic downturn would lead to increasing conflict. The suggested fundamental conclusion is that the average level of peacefulness in 2012 is approximately the same as it was in 2007. I'm going to skip the next cards. Go to nanotech. No STEM worker shortage. Cameron doesn't equal 14 because of research the country has more than twice as many STEM degrees as job. Also because there's only modest wage growth. There's no shortage of STEM workers in the United States. STEM employment was 5.3 million, but there are 12.1 million STEM degree holders. Cut the evidence there. And STEM can't solve the economy. Paul Whitley 10. The focus on STEM education is economically irrational when the current labor market is demanding graduation. Feels like finance, media, law, states, very fields are being sacrificed in order to promote STEM subjects. While educational time for the general is clearly linked to economic growth on national level, there's no clear correlation for specific field. There's no relation between economic growth and percentage of students. Percentage of students enrolled in any particular discipline. The economy of Brazil and Carbiera and 12 colleges have grossly overstated the fragility of nature. Does not support the fragile nature of the disappearance of one species. Does not lead to the extinction of all other minds of species. Can be consequential for the chestnut has been extinction of the pigeon, the sea cow to the dodo with no measurable effects. Stories of resilience are not isolated. A thorough review of the literature identified 240 studies of ecosystems following measure the abundance of species as well as ecosystem function recovered in 72% of the studies. The nature is so resilient and can recover rapidly from even the most powerful disturbances around the sheer noble wildlife describing the 2010 oil spill was consumed by bacteria. As we destroy habitats, we create new ones. You want me to send more copy?
Yeah. Just send us the cards tomorrow.
Okay. I'm just gonna highlight it in like red where I marked it.
Like pencil.
Alright, let's just start. Right. The alternative is to refuse sort of the consideration of the app, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how does that sort of refusal I guess rather deny or resolve or address the existence of civil society and the genocide of natives?
Yeah, so we say that the ballot's a libidinal investment. It's an endorsement of which sort of libidinal investment the judge wants to make. We say that the act is inherently settler colonialist. Thus, the libidinal economy sort of voting act. The libidinal economy still allows for a continuation of you to keep on reading like sort of settler colonialist shit.
Can you explain the libidinal economy in context of the critique?
Yeah, so we say that there's a libidinal economy. The Juarez evidence does a really good job of sort of explaining this, talking about how sort of red bodies are met through a lot of sort of like unexplainable violence, there's gratuitous violence. The examples that the Juarez evidence specifically gives is sort of like how native bodies are met with the highest rates of police altercations, how natives are met with sort of alcoholism, substance abuse, etc.
Juarez advocates for the fact that there is no hope for like indigenous folk in sort of the government. How does Juarez explain sort of the success of Sharice Davids and her candidacy for representative?
Well, we'll make specific claims. The Shoten evidence talks about how, sort of looking towards aims and looking towards stuff like the future and stuff like that itself is problematic. We'll make a lot of turns case arguments.
Now.
Like, she got elected.
She's
Well,
elected.
Yeah, but also we'll make sort of like settler move to innocence arguments, specifically indicting your
Davids
notion.
specifically?
Even if there is examples of reform, it's a question of the meta level framing. Our argument is that it's a different, it's the same form of, it's the same violence, it's just displayed in a
Alright.
different way.
Can you kick the alternative?
We'll unconditionally defend the ethic, but we do not have to unconditionally defend the alternative.
Yeah, we defend that we should refuse the
Is the alternative
so
part of the ethic though, is I guess our question.
We'll unconditionally defend
Yeah,
the
we'll
ethic.
defend
We do
our
not have
ethics
to unconditionally defend the alternative.
Let me make this really simple. So
You
you
can
can
kick
kick the King 17 evidence.
I said
you can
3
kick the
times that we're
alternative.
not
I'm just
unconditionally-
very confused on what does unconditionally defend the ethic of the alternative, but not defend the
So I
alternative.
just said we'll unconditionally defend our ethic, but we will not unconditionally
So
defend
you
the
can
alternative.
kick the alt. Okay. The Matthew Man card. I guess I'm a little confused as to one. It seems to be in the context of sort of like accelerating towards like societal collapse.
Matthew Min makes a argument about endocolonization and how the idea that there are specific, like, that we must develop our technology to control these disasters, it results in us developing these technologies way too quickly and it leads to accidents, right?
What part of the app ever mentions of like accidents or like?
When his rhetoric is very consistent on technological progress and U.S. technological hegemony, which we say is problematic because it accelerates the process of which, or the speed in which technology and sort of things are developed, which doesn't allow us to understand the ramifications and the implications of these sort of technologies.
Okay, I'll take her. I don't think it's necessary. Do you think
There's
it's
one
necessary?
here, you can plug in right now, I'm gonna pull.
Just bring it up.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to add it. Okay, I'm almost done.
Just tell me when you want to bring it up.
I'm looking at this one. Do you want to undo that?
Stop prep 62.3. Send it. Yes. What is my Gmail? Absolutely fine. There we go.
And like apparently.
Alright, should we start?
Is that Sherry or you? Here? Yeah. Did you send it?
Yep.
Is that Sherry?
Right. Everybody good for order?
Yes.
Right, it'll be the econ advantage, the nanotech advantage, and then the critique.
How much prep y'all have?
653. You guys want to walk around water tomorrow?
Yep. You see that?
One second, so.
Actually, I'll take a second. Yeah, no, that's my dog. Forget.
It's
We're at 6:40. You guys want to?
Do you want to join? You just on Tuesday? He said he's okay on the judges. I don't know who he hired. It's us versus
Everybody good?
same order, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Econ, Biotech, okay?
Yep.
The app solves the economy. The first argument is affluence. Farmers failing now is our argument that immigrants and workers are going elsewhere due to competition with other countries. That's why moving back to the country is key. Even despite that, they dropped two internally. First, talk about factory productivity, immigrants, and boost the economy's supply and demand growth, which causes 3% growth. Also, they dropped entrepreneurs, which independently solves the advantage. There are no war arguments. First, they don't assume counterbalancing. China and Russia are willing to test the U.S. ID proven by the South China Sea and Crimea and hacks. All prove they're willing to test the U.S. 3% growth is the metric for which they measure the U.S.'s ability to lead the global world, which means if it falls below that, if it stays below that, they will continue to test the U.S. That's the Haas and Burroughs evidence that the test Trump, none of their evidence assumes Trump is right. It's from directly after the recession. It doesn't assume how Trump reacts to economic decline. That's the Post evidence. The nanotech advantage, the shortage argument. One, that's not our argument. There's a shortage. Second, it's the Hernandez evidence says that in the future means that there's new sectors like biotechnology and nanotechnology that need workers that aren't necessarily full now. The third argument is that they don't have zero evidence to nanotech specific, which means you shouldn't evaluate it. The STEM can't solve the economy argument. That first, that's not our argument. The internal on the other advantage solve the economy. We just need to prove that nanotech can solve warming through things like nanomaterials. The environment is not resilient. Things like the global displacement of 3 billion people due to ocean levels rising costs, massive resource conflicts and food insecurity, which all independently cause war and escalate globally. They also know things like ocean acidification and smog, which independently cause extinction. Go to the critique. Our framework is they get competitive alternative impact framing. If we get to weigh benefits to simulate government action, view the alternative through the scope of solvency. If they win link arguments, that's not a sufficient reason to vote neg, unless they have the capacity to resolve them. B, debating the case is vital to engagement, truth testing and decision making, get education about what ought to happen. Their framework makes evidence of offense, which kills fairness. C, specificity is educationally valuable. Their interim causes infinitely aggressive debates about unprovable initial assumptions. Reducing existential risk should be the top priority in any coherent moral theory. Plumber, and 15, whatever more you do, that's important. The research being started, limiting test for you should hear all your disabled rules. Tendency to assume there's relevant to outcomes, so that you can take all ethical actions with our attention and take consequences into account. Any possible versions of virtue ethics must be considered the probably good and impartial point of view. If our own percentage of the well-being of future people matters, reducing existential risk is the most important thing in the world. Even if things do not go well, I am optimistic they will broaden sentence and debates our statistical models of scientific graphs and narratives allow us to engage in depth of literature to understand incredibly complicated processes. Allow us to test whether certain understandings of the future might be useful and how to get there, even if we don't have our hands on levers of power now. The debate-based uniquely key allows us both sides to engage with hypothetical action and points of flaws. And the alt doesn't change the framework states operate with. That takes out all the root cause claims, external impacts, justifies epistemology. Their heuristic makes war and structural violence more likely. De Araujo. In 14, if humans were morally better, there'd be less fewer worldless terrorism, save our environment. The assumption is false. Not all threats, not political arrangement that prevents the shared goals of your responsibility catch from the responsibility. Structural issues main factor underlying conflicts. The states are only relevant actors can be for our moral considerations are secondary against security and survival. If the structure compels like individuals acted in the political leaders compelled to security, even if human beings become morally enhanced, so human economy still have to face this scary scenarios. Moral enhancement will motivate political leaders to build nuclear weapons, determine nuclear capabilities, as long as the structure of politics can also seek cooperatives. The president of possible enemies and future leaders will fail to cooperate, engage in wars, and even areas critical to survival likely to continue even if leaders become less egotistic about more power seeking and addressing major threats to survival is unlikely to yield a result pursuit of the present framework. In case outweighs, even if they win framework, we get to access or impact our methods epistemologically valuable. I already did that work above. And warming turns all their everyday violence arguments and cause natural disasters, global displacement, billions, poverty, and mass suffering. Efforts to alleviate that suffering are negative in terms of ontology. Warming inequity harms indigenous people on reservations where the land is already too barren means EC is key, and it causes extinction. 13,000 nukes being fired causes billions of deaths on impact and creates mass suffering via cooling, starvation, and radiation. Extinction is a real possibility. They cause tangible suffering. Permutation due both. They're not mutually exclusive. Permutation due to the app and then the alternative. They go to the link debate first. The Juarez and Sean evidence are both they're both citizens links to the status quo. It has nothing to do with the app, just immigration policy in general, which means you shouldn't evaluate. We've turned all their arguments about the economy is the only way to solve war. Organizing and making nanotech economically viable is the only way to promote mass use and create sustainable energy. That's the Clar and Mobasser-Froese evidence. Third, the tech is key. That's the Mobasser-Froese and the Clar evidence all indicate why tech is specifically key to solving global warming, even if instances of technical merit are bad. So it's uniquely good in the context of the app. And fourth, the rest of their link arguments are just about futurity. We'll do that below. Futurity link. It's uniquely key to solving warming. It's the most effective factor. Markowitz, 16 institutes of studies across the country. We found that asking people to think about future generations lead mitigation while helping behavior from the present when it comes to the environment. Participants who consider future legacy decisions green.
and greater care for future generations, including those who may not have unleashed the powerful reason motivating individuals to take actions daily to prevent for the future of those. The lovers to promote activities being small to think about the future can help people to make conscious decisions. The Dali evidence still or death drive doesn't make any sense. One, it doesn't create violence. Preventing extinction is good because it creates possibilities for indigenous security. Preservation of life is key. Two, if we win our extinction threats are real, this argument is void because it means any reduction of that threat is good. Third, conflict is inevitable. Absent the checks on conflict are not better than the status quo counterbalancing. Fourth, elevating human extinction to a real possibility encourages a new social ethic to solve conflicts and create meaning to life. I've seen in Zhao in 9, we can influence the country to do so. Would be a crowning achievement for evolution, giving meaning to civilization by only by elevating extinction to serious discourse. We prepare ourselves. This change must involve communicating the message of all things serious to the word. Extinction does lie ahead. We must be in a very burden of anticipating the demise of our species. Realization that our species has survival criteria to spark a new social ethic and upgrade what we dismiss human nature. And studies don't support that drive replicable tests for impossible variables are too vague to operationalize. Prefer specific effects of their broad assertions. Holocheck. And 12, does logical constructs that have not been corroborated by precise observation, replicable tests or theories, and never precise enough to allow formulation of working hypothesis for which out of the experimental situation can be found. It is impossible to take science seriously provided. We would do most of general concepts are lacking in the precision of those libido and drive forces around themselves, lacking, albeit intelligent, lacking the allowing as a founder of psychoanalysis, privilege of being the final arbiter on the issues of conceptual change with psychoanalysis. That also answers all their liberal economy stuff. And settler colonialism we cannot explain at first warming. You can't explain Trump's inaction on climate change and why emissions companies deplete the rate they do. Second, counterbalancing. Even if they can explain why U.S. under some conflicts, they can't explain Russian and Chinese revisionism, and colonialism is an analytically useless category, fails to explain violence, focus and reform upon the nation-state policies is more productive for Vieiro. Analog, we cannot think of structural powers as colonialism, the lasting force that always overruns those we cannot use the power of the nation-state's colonialism, we cannot be an interpretive fantasy over it, system of colonialism, concurrency, regenerate, precisely what it needs to be criticized as best by arguments, cause for sharper consideration of causal, arguments on colonialism, and how other historical processes can peace scenario by transforming colonialism, there's a primordial focus of analysis we underestimate the importance of nation-states, so it is, well as deviate from understanding particular power relations between nation-states. So I read that Greenstein card should move down.
You can skip it.
Okay. The alt fails first. The Juarez evidence, according to the Nix claims about terra nullius, Native Americans are barred from sovereignty on the ontological level. This cannot be regarded as non-human occupants, which means they totalize native bodies and remove them of political agency. That rules over current grassroots policy change happening now. This would also help change remove representatives like Congresswoman Sharice Davis from promoting liberal and pro-native policies in the government. Second, they can't get the alt that's moved to innocence that reify settler violence by creating false promises. Hold them to it. Third, short-term impacts outweigh Trump lash out turns all their offense because of the world and the alt necessitates global escalation and conflict. Turns to critique. Fourth, the warming turns. We're on the brink now. Any risk of delays, net worth in the status quo. Cross-apply the impact turn. From above, I'll go back and read the. I'll read this. Analysis alone can't solve it. Decontextualizes later turn settlers and pushing out indigenous voices and redefining the very structures they critique hill growth. And all 14 decontextualized answers of settler colonial studies and solidarity further issuing indigenous peoples and redefining the storyline land that each of the above is founded upon decentering the potential to present settler colonialism as complete or inevitable rather than condition. We those who critique settler colonialism through then are then able to feel good and satisfied about their Christmas despite their anti-historic and decontextualization. Those are all the rules actually sustain colonial power by filling these set its own conditions. And because you see what it good is to analyze settler colonialism that analysis not shed light on sides of contradiction. We can settler colonialism will not be undone by analysis alone through the contentious engagement with the liberal and stolen ground on which people stand and come together on. Settler colonialism is only one power of analytic to consider. Anything else is self-serving. They're self-serving academic nonsense. It is not an actual effort to advance liberation of indigenous people. Greenstein in 16 we might be better off with the more specific concepts of problems with this other historical concepts applicable to cases that exhibit diversity conditions. Settlers of European orders retain strong links to mother country and Algeria and African colonies. The settlers use their political independence to incorporate them into the new policy. Indigenous people remain a majority of their population to maintain pre-colonial identities, not only broad countries of history, but also very greatly, but also patterns of social change based on incorporating indigenous people as labor power in South Africa. Mark the card South Africa. Do you want to mark the version of that card? That's the one I marked.
Yes, but what cards did you not read?
Okay, so the 2AC, I think I read it every card. That was the only one we marked.
Okay.
So I'll send that up. Actually, I didn't read the Barker card.
Where's that?
It's like the 5th sub point on the alt,
Okay.
I guess. I think.
Ready?
I can send this out really quick. There's just a line break where I left it. I'm good.
You good?
Yep.
Cool. Do y'all want to confirm?
Yeah.
What is
Did you
the
follow
world?
the one?
What is
Did
it?
you follow the 2AC?
What does the world of the permutation look like?
The permutation, you can analyze like colonialism and Latin America in the United States.
So,
Like there has not been a link
How's
to
that
the implementation of the plan or reducing restrictions on visas, just the idea of futurity and things like that. We can analyze those through like, and we've also like connected those, but like, you can analyze colonialism and do the app. You haven't read specific links to the mechanism. That's all.
okay, the Heather and Love evidence, it says that their account reads like a rap sheet, a list of traditional topics of deviant studies, and then it lists
theft, homosexuality, prostitution, incarceration.
I didn't read that card.
Oh, I thought you read every card except card.
Maybe I didn't. I did not read the Heather Love card either. Sorry, I just assumed that you're following like the speech.
No, that's fine. The Ribeiro evidence, it's talking about colonialism. When does the evidence mention settler colonialism?
I mean, it's still in the context of like how state powers interact with colonialism.
How does
Even
it
if
explain settler colonialism?
I mean, we'd say that theory still explains it in the same way.
How?
Also, like, what do you mean? Like the
I'm asking
distinction.
you to explain the card in relation to our critique.
Sure. Obviously, there are differences between colonialism and settler colonialism. This is in the context of in post-colonialism, understanding structural power and its relation with colonialism. The same can be said with the current nation states and settler colonialism and power relations between the two. And it says that it fails to explain the violence, even if it can make.
Why does it fail to explain violence? You're not giving me a warrant. Why?
Because it says it cannot be an interpretive panacea because the overemphasis on it
You're just
regenerates.
reading the card. I'm asking.
Yes,
for
I'm
a
giving you
warrant.
warrants from the card. Like, what do you want me to do?
Explain the card.
Okay, the card says that overemphasis on colonialism ignores one, other things that provide control. Second, it also
Sure.
ignores how states
That's
interact
fine.
with colonialism and the status quo.
The plumber evidence. What is an existential risk?
Something that risks. I mean, like, I don't want to define it as it is, but like, an existential risk is something that would end all human life on Earth.
Okay. What's human? What's a human?
I mean, there's like multiple definitions. We'll defend that people, we'll defend that, like, what do you, like, that's a broad question. How do you want me to answer this?
You said human in your 2AC arguments. I'm asking what the 1AC's definition of human is.
Okay, we think that humans are Homo sapien people. We think that everybody has value. I mean,
So it's
like,
based off of biological?
yes, biological, like, yes.
Sure, that's fine. Did you read Epstein and Zhao?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Well, we'll take prep starting now.
Did you give it to receive?
Yes. I was a little confused for a second, and I was like, it was 175, I was for the long. This is what, yes, I'm good. Actually,
Okay, step up, 516.
what? That's actually, okay, sure.
You have 2 buttons, right?
Sure, sorry.
It's just gonna be the critique.
You're right.
Framework's gonna be in the 1 in R if you have like a portion for that.
Is there an overview to start?
Yeah. Yeah.
I should just wait for Tracy to get back.
Oh, shoot, I didn't know that.
Is there gonna be a document?
Man, I can't ask what cards you
Uh-huh.
Sorry. Bathroom's far.
It's just gonna be the critique. Framework's gonna be in the 1 in R, so if you have like a portion for that. Is everyone good? Ontology determines the structure of society and being itself. If we win ontology, we win the debate because questions of reform, education, ethics, and being itself are overcome by questions of settler colonialism. Native people occupy structural position of rightness and finding an antagonistic relationship to the settler. The project of settlement requires the genocide of native flesh, and as a condition of possibility, we're right about ontology. They must explain the conquest and frontier violence, and the move to the reservation, Indian boarding schools, the highest police brutality rates, and the highest levels of poverty. When ontology, that's large evidence. The only cross example that they have is about the person in office, but that's just native fungibility. They take just one person in office doesn't disprove the whole theory of ontology and how native existence operates. They concede that settler ethics themselves are genocidal insofar as the comments in which allows them to debate about what impacts matter and what are ethical only is possible through the prior elimination of the native that clears land for intra-settler discussions of value, which means that genocides require an ethical question to evaluate violence that turns all their impact calculus. That's a Wilson evidence. The gratuitous violence committed against red bodies is a condition of existence. That's the Indian is murdered across time and space, which works through vectors that meet the red body through collusion and police brutality and violent victimization that work to wipe out red bodies. They say extinction outweighs the plumber evidences, and extinction errors like the Delhi evidence too internally subpointed the red bodies already in social death. Social death is a template for extinction, which is the very reason why extinction matters in the first place. Extinction is a trope allowing settlers to equate their own death to the death of humanity. The mechanism of disavowal foregrounds the survival of settler as the first priority, which mystifies settler colonial ideologies that are pushing indigenous peoples towards actual extinction in the present. Subpoint B is extinction is a fantasy of vulnerable settlers say that reinvest in the survival of colonialism, disavowing the possibility of extinction. A settler state allows for the disavowal of the end of settler colonialism. The impact is the fantasy of securing a peaceful future that drives for the extermination of indigeneity as a threat to vulnerable whites. Their attempt to prevent the one disease impacts is a form of settler futurity that must constantly predict the future in order to preemptively eliminate in the present and genocide to secure white identity. This outweighs the Dali evidence comes prior to any other impact because only embracing the possibility of extinction can open up the ethical world for settlers by allowing them to contemplate the end of the structure of colonization that they exist in. That turns the affirmative of disavowing how planetary crises are actually doing. And genocidal logic makes it much more likely the instability causing nuclear escalation through the settler lashing out to protect itself. No permutation. The investment in preventing a soon-come existential that is a bloodshed and confrontation with a catastrophe that makes our methods mutually exclusive. They concede that libidinal economy thesis that runs into the antagonism of whiteness, which structures all their impacts are conditional on the preservation of the white settler, ignoring that indigenous suffering is an aspect that allowed for whiteness to be defined and valued. They say, turns case national security, nuclear policy have been used to justify the eradication of native people. Nuclear wars already happening, but the objection of native body allows us to ignore it for the security weapons. As Sure was 16, all fourth world nations are living in eradicated territories of nuclear power in the name of national security. The nuclear governments maintain a policy of deliberately non-forming residents of nuclear testing for media using radioactive materials and native people signing without nuclear waste. Go without consent. There's a futurism linked to Shogun evidence affirmative his investment to call the future which security is possible and that we can all be safe, exemplified by the tag of the Haas evidence when it says slow growth is bad because, quote, Rex international order. This is a redeployment of settler colonial security for the civilization and sovereignty that must sustain itself through negation of native life and fungible property. There are two internally subpointed economic expansion in the past. Growth relies on the conception of the future in a constant opposition to the slow primitive world, the native social life. This libidinal investment into the constant accumulation to maintain the present, resulting in lash out to protect sovereignty from an outside threat. Subpoint B, nanotype is the settler post-human wet dream, a departure from organic forms of life, distancing through technological negation that allows for the escape the violence of genocide. This restores value to life through ontological distancing through this technology. We are no longer part of the nature of both the soul arbiters of state of being. The impact is replication of endless settler colonial technologies of violence. On the periphery of, as a nation in the future must constantly affirm itself. It's why Bush engaged in preemptive warfare and Israelis' elimination of Palestinians under the guise of self-defense. Turns case first, futurism, settler state are overcoded by logical desire, which in order to attain preservation must produce death to secure itself. Results in massive lash out in warfare, which turns a Trump lash out argument. Second, it turns economic insecurity B. A constant call for accumulation necessarily requires a warfare to secure itself at the state of accumulation. To protect unknown future means Trump to keep fast growth post-stable, post-impasse, to invading countries deemed as threat to economic interdependence. And third, it turns nanotechnology. They have no descriptive claim of how they direct nanotechnology usage is showed in the case that futures desired necessarily supersedes the limited actions, meaning that the qualitative future requires the use of nanotechnology for things like resource exploitation, accumulation, land scouting, and better industrial methods to exploit resources. They can't change the humanist quest for accumulation. The Markowitz evidence is wrong, and the settler colonialist Williston says that red bodies don't have the possibility of fantasize because they're past, present, and future is characterized by genocide. I prefer specificity because their evidence is specifically about white fantasization, but not about indigenous people. They say the alternative doesn't spill over. The Arjo evidence first, the framework is all pure. If we want ethical subject formation, that is a good model. Then any link that we win despite alternative policy proves that their plans is settler colonialist and unethical. Second, ethical imperatives. It's not our moral obligation to determine whether the refusal is genuine or not. The app should be rejected because the logic that they operate within is settler colonialist and unethical. Epstein and Dow evidence. Dow specifically answered this evidence. It says that the fantasization is a tool of white people which allows them to continue their existence. Dally also says that equating the death of settlers with the death of humanity is bad because it resupposes the hierarchy of white bodies over indigenous bodies. They say the holocheck evidence no death rights. Subpoint A, death rights exist. We are all driving on the same highway that inevitably leads to that. We attempt to cope with the anxiety by planning for the future, trying to ensure that the white child has a place to call home to save humanity. We have the desire to reproduce. That desire is one of the that is inherently utopian, but with that utopia comes the sacrifice of the native child. Subpoint B, psychoanalysis may not be falsifiable, but neither is any prediction that they have made. We think that the likelihood that we are right is far higher than the asked prediction. Subpoint C, even if we're wrong, then nothing really happens. But if we're right, then we don't act, then we allow gratuitous violence to continue. The Riviero evidence, subpoint A, classify the reform answers from the overview. Subpoint B, there's homogenization. Decide their evidence is specific to colonialism, not settler colonialism, which homogenizes over settler colonial theory and its intricacies, reinforcing the belief that settler colonialism is only the initial act of colonization, but not an ongoing structure of genocide. That structures over psyches, that papers over indigenous struggle, and ignores prior clearing of land, terra nullius that made colonial endeavors possible in the first place, which links them back to the critique. But also, this subpoint C, this court doesn't say what they think it says. It says that colonialism isn't the same across countries, i.e. Bolivian colonialism isn't comparable to U.S. settler colonialism. We agree that we have a specific analysis on how the U.S. is settler colonial and is the broader structure within it. We don't over-determine anything. The Greenstein evidence, the overview answered this. The settler colonialism is the only analytic that can explain violence against the natives. Water says that it's a continued structure of elimination that renders black and red people abject. The permutation, I'll do it over here first. Link sure know what the impact on the net benefit and prove mutual exclusivity. Second is severance or intrinsic out of the entirety of the 1AC because the alternative is complete rejection of the affirmative, which makes the alpha moving target and skirts neck links and votes for education. There's a myth of progress link. The depoliticization of depoliticizing embrace of the liberal regime of progress through the 1AC's rhetoric of consistent technological process and U.S. technological hegemony. It's a fantasy of a godlike technological security which obscures the underlying reality of violence. There are three impacts of this: subpointing anti-colonization, management, and threatening others, subjects them to exploitation, inequality, and paranoia that outweighs because of violence against these living that is excluded from traditional impact calculus to maintain the illusion of security. Subpoint B, the desire to control creates endless wars to subjugate the periphery and the Western Kosovo, Syria, and Iraq. Vietnam testing grounds for development of new weapons and technology. Subpoint C, pure war calendar says that technological control forces out of human decision making in favor of autonomous systems that accelerate the pace of war beyond our ability to refuse the alternative. I'll do it over here. Vote negative to endorse a refusal of hope entirely for a full-fledged confrontation with trauma and loss. That's key evidence. Is a rejection of the 1AC call for the battle, which is not only an act of insubordination but frustrates the forward movement of the academy. But warrants you to ask an adjudicator to make a libidinal divestment from their unethical relationship with politics within the room, much like Native and Black feminists who use refusal to question the various systems and institutions in order to acknowledge that secure humanity in violent ways. We refuse the endorsement of the 1AC to challenge its problematic notions. There's a framing issue for this round. It's not a plan versus counterplan debate. The alternative is a question of which libidinal investments we should make, which destroys the possibility of a permutation because it forwards a progression of skepticism, which is incommensurable with alternatives. Deliberate refusal of the 1AC. Snellgrove doesn't answer the alternative because prior to land return, it's a question of our libidinal investments that we make. Zane, do you have anything you want me to do?
How much time do you have?
30 seconds. Case. No time for ocean acidification. That's totally irrelevant. A study said it's concerned that will affect the water shift at pH. Even if that shift still large, not going into a current of 1,000 years. Even under the worst case scenarios, it's virtually impossible for CO2 to rise enough for that kind of change to burn at less every fossil fuel on Earth. Any change beyond 0.5% is far beyond the runs of reality. The IPOC's highest scenario is 6.6 units, 2,300. Many studies are that the pH will never occur. Will believe these things were less allocated in memory and less benefit. No. You got first.
I'll send it out.
Can you also send out the card you read on the 15th?
Yeah.
What card was that? I'm just gonna send it in the file.
Yeah, me too. I second.
Minus 7.
So, crossouts.
Yep. You good? Alright. Did you read the Sherwood card?
Yes.
I'm just kidding. Alright, so I just have a question. So, like, on the death drive stuff, you say what is a settler fantasy and how can you prove it's true?
Yeah, so we'll make arguments that arguments that the libidinal economy and the debt drive can't be understood through scientism, rather it's an experiential phenomenon, which means that if we win we need, in order to disprove the libidinal economy and the debt drive, you need to win particular examples in which the debt drive and the libidinal economy don't exist. We've read a bunch of examples in the overview that specifically talk about how the BAR's evidence indicates that the libidinal economy exists due to things such as native alcoholism, police brutality, etc.
Alright, I have a question. So what does, how do non-native people analyze whether they've made a libidinal, disinvested from the libidinal
So
economy?
we've read specific links to the app, which prove that the app is settler colonialist. We say that voting affirmative means that you've made a libidinal investment in the affirmative. If that is true, that it is the libidinal investment, the libidinal economy incentivizes you to keep on reading settler colonialist shit. If we win a link, that proves that you're unethical, and thus we provide a better libidinal investment that interrogates our implication within settler colonialism.
So if we just interrogate complicity, is that resolved?
Well, we say that if we win prior framework arguments that specifically talk about the nature, if we win framework arguments, that comes prior to any of the post-beyond implications of the app. But the framework arguments specifically prove that sort of the discourse and the epistemology that we defended around matters. Which means that if you're defending something that's unethical, that's probably problematic.
Okay, would the alt resolve in the end of all settler colonial violence, or just in a specific instance?
In this specific round, we say that it's a matter of discourse. Settler colonialism operates through momentary lapses, which means that if people are settler colonialists, we should sort of refuse to or divest away from them. And their models that they share.
Momentary lapses, why does the alt matter if we divest and then we go back to being settlers?
Because we say that if we win, because it's framework proves that it debates the side of ethical subject formation,
But it
which
doesn't
proves that.
matter because it's only momentary.
Well, it still means that we shouldn't be unethical. But momentary lapses meaning that it happens, i.e. in rounds when people defend unethical stuff, we should sort of stop people from doing that.
Okay, I just want to make sure I have the links correct. So first was libidinal investments, and then the second one was just basically a bunch of futurity arguments, right?
The first one was the extinction narratives link. The second one was the futurism link. The third one was the endopolitics link.
Okay, so futurity bad, and then what is settler futurity? You use the word a lot, I just don't believe it.
Yeah, we've made claims that settlers can sort of fantasize about the future, however native people can't because their past, their present, and their future is characterized in genocide.
Right, that's fine.
That's it.
Wait, how much background do we have?
We have 516.
Stop, right.
y'all get it?
Yep. So order.
So framework.
K on the framework, then the condo argument, case in order of growth, and nanotech. Anyone not ready?
Sorry, what was the one again?
K on framework, and then condo, and then case on growth and nanotech. Alright. Is anyone not ready? The question of your ballot is one of ethical subject formation to be assigned a settler subject formation in which colonization is enacted through embodied speech checks in which if we win the settler colonialism ontologically structures identities and fashioning an ethical role for settlers to confront their privileged complicity comes prior to whether the plan can be endorsed because it's the only external impact to debate. Extend King and Juarez. The question debate is whether or not to invest in liminal fantasies. The affirmative multiple reason to prefer Hayes is predictable, fair and reciprocal. The affirmative against a way that representation, research model, ethical frameworks, and political ideologies against a criticism they should be predictable grounds says the affirmative necessarily has to research those things to create the affirmative. They don't get to weigh the fiat impacts of the affirmative, but the negative isn't generating any impacts from fiat either, which means there's no disparity in ground. An example of the affirmative's impact ground is to say that utilitarian ethics are good, that IR realism is necessary, or that debates over policy simulation are good. B, any unfairness is good when collegiate and humanist codes of civil dialogue are flaunted in order to ensure discussion surrounding anti-black or settler colonial violence as good. Calls to fairness are determined by settler power. Also check the intensity of this argument. We're not saying uneven speech times car clipping or even disclosure good. We're simply saying that they don't get to weigh that their false impacts. C is the disorientation. Just said you should call into question their authority to legislate on land in the first place. Their ideological reiteration of autonomous settler political selfhood is the organizing logic of settler colonialism. The settler understands itself as carrying lawmaking capacity across space. You should refuse settler subject formation in favor of disorientation that removes or that refuses the moves of authority on stolen land. Rifkin and 13 is helping become a side of a break-in routine that produces reorientation. The project appears less than locating in space to discover the fullness of self, then making alien already occupied space. Shifting orientation offers the possibility for engaging with that takes less for granted. The matrix state becoming conscious of sentiment involves relinquishing autonomous extra political selfhood existing in a place apart instead of opening on the recognition not only of enduring native present face history with displacement that provides the continuing possibility for the settler non-native and the interaction to actualize the geographies of settler comes and differ to the ordinary action whose aim is not to start but whose effects is to reiterate the self-evidence of the settler. Geopolitics non-natives might disorient themselves to understand that the terrain of non-natives inhabit has never seemed to be a site of struggle. And a couple quick responses to the affirmative. First off, we don't move the 1EC. The 1EC still provides offense and defense, not based on the fiat, but on the 1EC is a rhetorical scholarly artifact caused by the predictable fair reciprocal argument here. B, clash is still possible. Multitude of what should be predictable ground caused by the groundless from predictable fair and reciprocal argument here. And C is that generic debate is good. We don't cause generic debate, but if the F wins what we do, it's good. And in the age of Trump and the anti-scene, we need to be having debates about whether wholesale institutions, ethics, or ideologies are worth defending. They make an argument as to why we should. They make an argument as to why you should theorize the alternative through solvency. We don't need to win solvency, but rather our ethical orientation, specifically when the debate says it's a good idea. We're not able to affect the material conditions through things like fiat, but rather we can change our orientation within the round. Also, don't let the 1AR make any new framework arguments. Hold them to the 2AC. Block strategy is dependent on 2AC concession. The 1ARs and the constructive speech win law ratios go F, and they need to speak first and left. The conditionality debate. We stated in cross-examination we will defend our ethics unconditionally. This just because even if we don't go for the king evidence, it doesn't matter where our ethics are unconditional, which means they don't get any access to any of these arguments. Case on the group. Except Mezicado 18, it was a mishandle. The pharmaceutical industry is no longer innovating any of its medications, and 78% of the patents approved by the FDA are already in the market. It turns their growth arguments because it means that the pharmaceutical industry fails to increase growth. They say that this is their argument, but no, it's not. They're trying to create create an increase in the innovation of pharma so that they're able to create economic growth. Our argument is that pharma won't innovate anymore, which means that there's no increase in growth, and pharma fails. Dong 15 pharma productivity declined versus executives falling 80-fold output or remain constant irrespective of the investment. Portfolio management and further predicted from the patent clues. There's a low probabilities of success translate into weaker competition. All of the easy drugs have been made publicly to stress the higher hurdles. The final two factors to throw money is tendency. The basic research force fires found that Dressner evidence extended. There's no impact. Economic decline doesn't cause war. That's Dressner 12. The studies confirm that the Great Recession has not increased the rates of conflict because the average levels of peacefulness in 2012 were the same as in 2007. They haven't won. Like conflict is comparatively worse post-recession, meaning you assign a minimal risk of impact. Our argument is that even during the times of economic distress, the chance of violence is the same exact as if there was no distress and econ is resilient. Their own author puts in 16 responses to increase economic resilience, diminish spillovers between economies, create some room for additional stimulus. The system are better capitalized, monitored, more risk averse, less linked to the centers. Trade imbalances are smaller. Central banks are committed to stabilization and balance sheets. Now the nanotech debate, you can extend Cameron and Ziegler 14. There's no shortage of STEM workers because there's 5.1 million workers in the status quo and 12.1 million people with a STEM degree holders. It means the status quo solves the half impacts. They say that that's not our argument. That's your internal link. Your internal link is about STEM being key to nanotech. We've made arguments as why status quo already solves that. Now that Xen Kariyama, the environment is resilient, prefer empirics. Out of 240 studies, 72% of these studies concluded that the environment recovers. Also, the ocean acidification, carbon nutriency answers that.
We have 540. Sorry. I'll take the fifth argument. Which one confused? Yeah.
It's 640.
640.
640. Okay. Yeah. I'll stick. That'll probably be useful.
640.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do that.
What's the order?
Advantage 1, Advantage 2. I upload framework on a separate page, so I'll go there, and then the K problem. Alright. Alright. Anyone not good?
For an half where you say the impacts are all fake, the case debate was pretty sloppy. In the pharmaceutical arguments, we're not going for that internally. It's a question of total factor productivity. Immigrants resolve total factor productivity by creating spillover jobs and creating new demand in the economy, which maintains 3% growth. That's key to preventing counterbalancing war. China and Russia are testing us in the status quo. Economic decline means that testing escalates to nuclear war. That also answers their no war evidence because there doesn't assume that they decent counterbalancing. Also, there's a performance contradiction argument here. There are case arguments where they can't divest when they're limited investments, and media authors that support not their arguments. Dresner is the pinnacle of defense realism, which is scholarship that they have said is bad. If they can read scholarship that they have impact on that justifies the epistemology act means the framework is a wash. They say that economy is that's a bad cutting of the post emphasis that previous policies allow the economy to become stable, but that is obviously change the status quo advantage too. Look, you're not irresponsible in any impacts. We're going through the flooding scenario. Says that warming will cause massive amounts of flooding and displace millions of people on coastal cities. That causes a major regional instability that will escalate into nuclear war. They say that the shortage is no shortage. This STEM evidence is not specific to nanotechnology. Only when I see Hernandez evidence, I said that there's a huge demand for STEM nanotechnology experts. Status quo that is not being met. You should not prefer the evidence because it's super generic. And they said that environment is resilient. That's not responsive to the flooding scenario I mentioned about. That also the flooding scenario turns native violence because it would cause more displacement of native people because that means the people who were initially lived on coastal cities move inland, which would cause people to get kicked off the land again, which causes recolonization. Framework. Extend our interpretation that you should weigh the applicants begins to weigh the applicant about commit alternative framing into two reasons. First is fairness. There are an infinite number of fully valid arguments. Weighing the average, the case, the only objective metric for analysis. The one you see is evidence of good often to design to prove why the average is good. Second is education. The counter interpretation is regressive. It causes debate about initial unprovable assumptions. We've read specific internally to and how the app solves and hold the negative same standards, especially when not contesting over half of them. Only weighing the average, the alternative. If the app is ethical to begin with, the few offensive piece of arguments I need to say here is first, it's not reciprocal. It's only the affirmative only should have to defend what the advocacy proposes. It's not a question of the research model we propose because that would lead to generic debates. Real impact on generic debates here. Generic debates are bad for education because it avoids discussion of institutional mechanisms that we allow for, but it also allows for us to consider broader superstructures. It's not a question.
Answer the disorientation dissent, and then also extend that they have to have an alternative to explain.
The disorientation is it's all in the context of net legislation. That's obviously not a question that the app proposes. Rather, is the affirmative a good idea? Obviously, the only way to resolve that question is if we weigh the app. What was the next thing?
Just say they
need the alternative ultimately to actually weigh any of the impacts of the affirmative. They can't just kick and say we defend the ethic without actually having the alternative there. Go to Hebron. I'll do the extinction outweighs debate first. It outweighs for two warrants. First is it's a reversible extinction and all future possibility valuable life is subjective, but you can't undo that. Second is future generations. There's always a chance that things get better in the future. Extinction removes that possibility. A few good examples of this is Reese Davis and other native movements such as I don't know more that are acting against the state and status quo. They've only answered this in native fungibility, but that comes with no warrants. So the two areas should be able to clearly extrapolate that. Even if that's somehow native fungibility, that also only ultimately proves that the status quo can change through native movement status quo but primarily if they can engage through the state also means that futurity is also a good metric for evaluating political change. The death drive debate, the death drive is fake. One, no link. Preventing extinction doesn't recreate balance. It's good because it creates possibility for addition to futurity. I've impacted that above. Second, threats are real. We've got two advantages the next behind on. If we win case, then that proves that any reduction in the risk of extinction is good. The third, the extinction rhetoric is good. It creates a new social ethic by acknowledging the mortality of people, which changes the nature of human nature. A link debate. Group the extinction and futurity link. Both are indexed to futurity. Futurity is good, and so that's a method of resolving worry because it allows for future actions, and it helps it also invokes a new social act. That was all done on the extinction outweighs debate. The economy link there, extrapolation of the impact scenario is wrong. Multilateralism is the best way, but it will check back against the impacts of accumulation because it acts as a conflict dampener. The nanotechnology link, first of all, free market and current government regulation check back against bad usage of nanotechnology, which means that this impact scenario is also equivalently false as well.
Okay, that's good. Go to the
the alternative debate. They don't explain that. They can't explain the existence of realism, which means that F is a diss to the alternative. The realism is good. 2 warrants. First, human nature. Empirics prove that realism is the best way to describe the realism describes why the environment is collapsing, why war is shooting like the status quo. 2, second is other actors. Even if you win, the U.S. doesn't operate under realist framework. Other countries like China and Russia do. That's a counterbalancing way. Winning realism proves that our epistemology is good.
Okay, go to my computer really quick.
And then extends to which CS is only using analysis and understands that the boss provides a feel-good politics that ignores challenging actually structures of repression which necessitate engaging the state.
How much time do we have?
450.
What?
450.
450?
450.
450.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry now. It's going to be the critique. That earthbound stuff, I'm just going to do the critique.
I just have a quick, like, where is framework?
I have a separate sheet for framework. So framework, it's going to be overview, framework, and then K-proper.
So the word's just a key.
Yep. Is everyone good? Game over. The 1 year's conceded meta ethics was framed the entirety of the round of their speech on genocide. A prior question to any discussion about it, because before we can understand why certain impacts matter or are ethical, we had to clear the land of the natives in the first place for the common speech struggle upon in the first place. That's a literature evidence. There are two possible balance for the negative. First is framework. Winning metaphysics and ontology means that we win framework because education and fairness are just tools to make it better for the settler nation state. It means that they have no out-around impact to their model because questions of becoming better governmental advocates are overcoded by ontology. Oh, my computer froze. Nice not that.
I have 434 left.
Alright, everyone good?
Yeah.
Are overcoded by ontology. There's an extinction narrative links. I'm going for a combination of the extinction narratives and the futurism that indicates all their offense. Their threats are constructed off the notion that there's assumed to come threat of the extinction that threatens humanity, which makes the threat of realism a reality. Extinction rhetoric creates an illusion of a vulnerable settler state under the threat of destruction. This is a move to settler innocence that prevents decolonization because white settlers become victims to protect it rather than being complicit in genocide. This also justifies direct extermination of indigenous people who are the #1 threat to the settler state, perceiving them itself as vulnerable since the presence of indigenous people threatens the legitimate claim to the state and land, which is the very existence when settlers perceive that threat to their existence. The libidinal economy directly incentivizes the extermination of indigenous people, first creating the need to protect white child from outside threats, framing issue for the 2 AR, prevent the 2 AR, don't let the 2 AR make any new responses due to the concession made in the 1 AR. I don't have a 3 AR to answer. They haven't presented an ethical calculus. They haven't extended their, meta ethics turns all the utilitarians from framing argument because you shouldn't, our argument is that you shouldn't, that all life should not be evaluated equally. You should overvalue native people because genocide brings the game of equality through, to the white able-bodied men. The framework debate, they messed up the framework debate, which is an automatic reason about negative. The question of your balance one of ethical subject formation, which means that users and adjudicator don't have to evaluate any of their impact because framework determines which impacts you prioritize. View the actor's pedagogical element, view this pedagogical element's role. Judge is called the ethical subsequent in educational spaces such as debate, which means that your prior obligation to weighing the plan is to fashion ethical world for sellers to confront their privilege complicity. Furthermore, if we win psychoanalysis, it means that there's no reason to receive that rational dialogue shifts public opinion. Rather, it's viewed irrational and unconscionable. Their responses are responsive. We're not critiquing debates for which means that it isn't a double turn. Also, psychoanalysis and settler education turns their ability to access advocacy so because it means that they train racist advocates. Each of the dissents prove the unethicality of the affirmative. There's a disorientation dissent. The Rifkin evidence settlement is made possible through everyday orientation towards space that disavow imperialism and presence of indigeneity. The speech act centered upon hypothetical plan is enactment of colonization and carrying of the lawmaking capacity across space. They presume their authority to speak upon this land and legislate academia. As settlers, we must disorient our perspectives by making spaces that we occupy alien to us. Only if you focus on speech and land rather than disembodied plans can dismantle settler subject formation. This implicates all their offense on framework. They've only gone for fairness in education, but they concede that fairness and internal link to education, which we have impact from with the disorientation. This Rifkin says that we need to unlock or erase modes of knowledge through a position of disorientation and refusal of settler colonialism. Their model is the legislation of academia through the disembodied plans, bolstering imperialistic thinking, which impact her to their model of thinking. They say that we need an alternative. We'll go for the alternative, which means that another conditionality argument makes sense. I'll do the alternative over here. The alternative refusal of the 180's call for the ballot, which warrants you as a judge to make a libidinal investment to deny their unethical relationship with the politics of the room. That's the king evidence. Our strategy questions and redirects discussions of the affirmative colonization politic refusal, not just no, but a redirection of ideas, otherwise unacknowledged or unquestioned. This also jives well with the Rifkin evidence because the Rifkin evidence says that we need an absolute position of disorientation from settler colonial ideologies. The Perkon argument, I'll do it over here. There's no impact to the Perkon argument because we have disproven you on 2 levels. Subpoint A, the critique proves the unethicality of the affirmative on a theoretical level, but subpoint B, all the case arguments disprove the subpoint C, we're not going to go for any of the case arguments, which means that there's no impact to this. K proper. They say extinction outweighs, but that's a question of framework. As long as we win framework, that means that they shouldn't be able to evaluate. They shouldn't be able to. You shouldn't be able to. They shouldn't be able to have any of their impacts evaluated. But it also is not a question of extinction being outweighed because the value evidence specifically talks about how the fantasization of extinction scenarios itself is problematic. You can call up the card and read it. It specifically talks about how fantasizing about a possible future is a white settler fantasy that allows for this objection of native bodies. They say the debt drive debate. They concede our framing on the debt drive, which can't be proven through science because it's an unconscious phenomenon, which means that it's down to particular examples which they have not provided, which means that there's no way that they can win this. Crossway the 5 examples I given the 2 in the overview. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. Alcoholism, police brutality, all prove the libidinal economy. But this also means that there's no offense. They don't have any offense to any of our links because there's no contestation of the libidinal economy or the psychoanalytic drives that go with the links. They say that futurity allows for social values. So there's will impact on their social values. Their social values are parasitic. The value evidence specifically talks about how their social values culminate in forms of settler colonialism in the constant need for the settler to fantasize extinction scenarios allows for the settler allows for settlers to maintain their own hegemony. The nanotech link, I'm not going for, which means that there's no offense in it. They can't the realism debate. They said realism subpoint A. This is new in the 1AR, but subpoint A it's irrelevant in debate. If we win our framework, then it comes down to discussion. Then our discussion comes out because the debate's decided ethical subject formation. But also subpoint B inevitably doesn't assume an alternative which we're winning. They've conceded the Chauvin arguments that turns case means that it's possible for them to win. Futurism and settler state are uppercut by the logic of desire, in which in order to attain preservation must produce depth and security, so results in massive lash out and warfare, which turns all the Trump lash out and climate change arguments.
The 2:12 starting. Besides that, actually. No, like those didn't impact the future. Just like. Order will be econ advantage, nanotech advantage, and then K will be. It'll be framework and just like straight down, I guess. I'll try to make it clear where I am. I'm just gonna go straight down as much as possible.
when you collapse on the rhetoric of our impacts and extinction frame, you have to defend, you have to provide defense to our impact scenarios. There's zero defense extended to either one of the advantages, which means you can vote out before the 2 hour even ends. There's no economic decline. It causes Russia and China counterbalancing, which instigate into global conflict. They have no answers, which means only the AF creates a resolution. Only the AF resolves this by maintaining 3% growth, which checks back against Chinese and Russian aggression. They also conceded that we solved the environment. They also conceded that we solved the environment by creating new technologies. They have the ability to capture carbon and prevent global displacement of 3 billion people and global warming. These are all 2 independent dissents to the alternative, and their framework. They have a private defense thing, which means that you should assume that to be true. This also disproves all their arguments about futurity, because we have provided concrete examples of what happens when you don't vote. If you don't vote affirmative, then go to the critique framework. The framework is just a rewording of the futurity extinction stuff. So all we need to do is justify the affirmative to win it. They are way behind. They're way behind on all of the frameworks. So extend our interpretation. We need to weigh the AF against the impacts of a competitive alternative. There's no reason why to absent the disorientation to set in the 2 hour, which means all we have to do is weighing the AF is valuable. It's key to fairness, because we have to wait 8 minutes to see their interpretation of framework makes it impossible to be affirmative, because we have to justify all of our examples of non-fossil file information before we weigh the affirmative. All their arguments about ethics don't make any sense, because they haven't provided what the ethic looks like post-affirmative. The alternative debate is so bad and so reliant on the affirmative debate is so reliant on the alternative that there's no way they can win. They also conceded that the alternative has to have the ability to resolve the links. They haven't given any reasons why the alternative resolves futurity or provides resolution to examples of gratuitous violence like alcoholism and police brutality. They say the legislation via disembodied the plan. This isn't responsive, because 1, we don't obviously enact legislation. It's a question of providing solutions that de-incentivize groupthink and create better policy solutions. That's our analysis. We obviously don't defend the plan actually happens, but we have to defend it's a good idea. The written evidence about legislating on this land is not a question of why, if we can positive things are good ideas, which means it doesn't apply. All I have to win is win the futurity debate, and we win, because there's literally no other argument. Okay. I'm fine there. Okay. Okay, first they go for the Dali evidence. All their fantasization stuff makes no sense, because in the context of we are imagining impacts, we have proven that particular examples are real. Their only threshold for disproving all of their examples, in Central Jet Drive. I mean that we don't provide examples. The only examples they provide are alcoholism and police brutality, and they have zero ability to explain any part of the affirmative. The De Araujo evidence is excellent on this question. They can't explain realism. Russia and China are revisionists. They are discontent with the current international order. See the change of Russia fighting up naval power in Crimea, North Atlantic, and Red Sea to undermine Western ideology, and NATO. China's establishing regional hegemony that seeks to expand internal documents, military action, island hopping, Islamic slicing, and other actions prove each threatens the global national order, but provides a reliable ideological stance. They can predict their future actions. They can't explain how state actors function, which is an independent dissent to their framework and their alternative, because they can't explain how anything works besides virtue ethics. Even if they can explain why genocide is necessary, they can't explain why these countries act against each other, or how state versus state relationships function, which means they can't win the debate. Futurity is the best way to solve native genocide. 2 examples from the 1 era that the Tudor didn't even name back. First is Sharice Davis, a queer indigenous House representative for Kansas, advocating for pro-indigenous policies such as access to better education and social services, which isn't viable in the world alternative, because they disinvest themselves from all state engagement. Second is Island more pro-indigenous rights groups that is fighting major issues such as national poverty on reservations and employment discrimination by advocating for government policies. Both these political movements are predicated off futurity, which means that we're winning the impact turn on the next offense. The extinction scenarios, even if they're pretty light here in the 2 and R. Their only link here is incoherent babbling. They say realism is new. It's not responsive to what we say. Elevating extinction to an actual threat is necessary, because it generates action to prevent it. Even if there are some examples of where people create fantastical interpretations of extinction, they haven't disproven examples like global warming and war between the U.S. and China and Russia, which are concrete examples of extinction. Providing those and elevating things like warming to an actual existential threat is the only way to actually challenge it, because it forces action. That's the Epstein and Zhao evidence, and that's the Epstein and Zhao evidence and the Plummer evidence from the 1AC. The only other thing I need to go to is the alternative. It's pretty blippy in the 2. They say politics in the room around it, and they refuse to call into question. What does this mean? They haven't answered a couple things. 1, they can't explain realism, which means the app in and of itself is a dissent to their framework and the alternative. Second, they can see the snowbird evidence, which says that just changing our ethics is feel-good politics. They also can drop the double turn argument that they read realist authors that
Provide understandings of the world that they say are bad. If they're able to do that, then us talking about international politics and futurity aren't necessarily links.
Correct.
We're not looking.
Correct.